Where does creativity fit into compliance? In more places than you think. Problem solving, accountability, communication, and connection, they all take creativity. Join your hosts, Tom Fox and Ronnie Feldman, on Creativity and Compliance, part of the Compliance Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with Ronnie Feldman for another episode. So first of all, Ronnie, welcome.
Oh, thanks. I always enjoy your company.
Today, we are joined by Pat Figliano, Global Compliance Manager at Magna International. He's going to chat with Ronnie about a really interesting creative project that they both worked on. So, Pat, first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us. And I'm going to pass it over to Ronnie.
Hey, you asked her to say hi, and then she didn't get a chance to say hi. So say hi.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, so Pat, for the people who don't know you, who listen to this thing, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the compliance role and I guess an overview of the program that Magna has, and so we can establish kind of like who you are and what you guys do.
So I joined Magna back in 2012 in the legal department, thinking that I was just going to come and do the same thing I'd been doing for 25 years. But then in 2013, Joanne Haribe, who is our current Chief Compliance Officer, was given the opportunity to run with the Global Compliance Program and asked me to join her team. I haven't looked back. I absolutely love doing the compliance gig. It's a great way to be creative and get the creative juices flowing and how to present stuff to your employees and roll out onboarding. So I've had my hand in all of the elements that make up a good compliance program and assisting Joanne along the way. So it's been a lot of fun. And we're always looking for creative ways to showcase compliance because it is such a serious topic, but it doesn't have to be. And, that's part of the discussion we're going to have today.
So that's great. And real quick, for the people who aren't familiar with Magna International, could you give them just sort of a top level about the kind of company it is and what you're trying to do in a broad sense with the compliance program, and then we'll jump into the project.
Yeah, so Magna is a Canadian-owned company. It is a public company. We have over 165,000 employees globally, and we're one of the top manufacturing auto industry companies in the world. So it's a great company to work with. It's got an entrepreneurship kind of vibe. So it's a lot of fun. And so our compliance program, we're kind of at the mature phase of it right now. Back in 2012 and 2013, we were building it up. So, a lot of the challenges and things that we faced back then, we're not facing those right now, but we are trying to keep it fresh and keep the message and the education flowing.
So that's great. And I had met Joanne Haribe, I think at a Compliance Week conference, I want to say 4 years ago. And we had hit it off. And so then I got introduced to you, Pat, and we had been exchanging ideas over the years until we landed on one that landed on this one. So let's talk a little bit about the project. We ended up creating a storytelling series that ended up being called Tales from the Hotline. I thought maybe you could just share a little bit of, why don't you describe the project and what drew you to it, and we'll jump into it that way.
So when Ronnie approached us I think the first thing we did was kind of like a feeling us out. Are you interested? And then we had a brainstorming call about, what kind of topics could we talk about. What the Tales from the Hotline was intriguing to us because, developing a speak up culture is quite challenging, and trying to, teach the employees or get the message out there that it's okay to speak up as long as you do it in a proper way where you're not trying to, maliciously report things that aren't true, but, in good faith. And we were trying to find a way to sort of display or present ideas or things that were actually going wrong in the company and present it in a way that's a little comedic, but still getting the message across without it sounding so serious. So that was the intrigue of these, the Tales from the Hotline for us. And also just having we always wanted to grow our training and our videos library. So that was one of the intrigues for us, was just how can we have these little shorts. Ronnie, we always talk about these 1 to 2 minute segments They ended up being a little bit longer, but I think well worth it. Delivering the message in a great way. It's fun. They're animated. They really came alive. Like, I really, really enjoyed working through this project with you from start to finish. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. One thing, I guess this is sort of behind the scenes thing, but one of the things that I enjoy so much about this community is, I'm bringing these comedians and writers, entertainers to the table, and we're used to working on creative projects, but I like to peel back the curtain and let the ethics compliance community see the process and participate in the process for creating something new. Because like anything else, the more you peel back the onion, it's hard. It's hard to find like that right balance where you can say something that's truthful and meaningful and fun, but not too fun, but still fun. And then so anyway, you were a great participant in it, and actually I give you a lot of credit for kind of pushing back on things that were important to you, which is great. It helped us sharpen the knife and make things better.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't give you a question there. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the idea of telling real stories. I think is helpful because it allows you to, even if it's not necessarily from your company, but from a community of companies, bring these situations to life and debunk myths. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about how this concept and how it can help you teach on these subjects.
Yeah, so a lot of times, through the hotline, as most companies will see, employees report things and they think that nothing happens. So in a lot of cases, these tales from the hotline were great because it kind of gave you the end result. So it'll say that the guy was fired, or that this happened or that happened, or some sort of discipline was carried out. But again, because they were sort of light and lively, it doesn't really hit the employee as hard as it would if it were like real life characters in a serious context. So I think it's important to show that companies are doing what they need to do with regard to any complaints or any concerns that are raised through their employees through their hotlines, and that action is actually taken. We're well aware of it. You're not the only ones that recognize that there's wrongdoing going on, but then there is a result in consequences in most cases, and we do conclude them in a proper manner. So.
I do, we in some ways stumbled into this part of the process in that, traditionally most ethics programs, when they do video, they do it with scenario-based videos. Yeah. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. Scenario-based videos are very good for teaching, but they're very expensive to make. Mm-hmm. And they're hard to make realistic because you have to deal with scenes and sets. And this storytelling style allowed us to tell a full, well-rounded story with a beginning, middle, and end. Here's what happened. Here's what they thought. Here's why it's wrong. Here's the policy that it relates to. Here's the resources that they could have used. And here's what happened. Right. I feel like it told like that whole 360 kind of story.
Yeah, and the biggest part, too, was the anti-retaliation piece. So I think most or all of the videos cover off the anti-retaliation side of things. So, just reminding employees that, you won't be retaliated against for any concerns raised in good faith. And that's just the way it should be.
Yeah, and the fact that, so thanks for bringing that up. Like, we often talk about the importance of promoting speak-up culture. And this sort of fills another hole, at least in our journey for creating content for companies, is that it starts to show what happens after you speak up, to do just what you talked about, the idea of building trust in the organization, that there's some more sense of organizational justice. And I don't really know too many ways to do that other than to keep telling people over and over and over what happened and showing them the mechanics of the process.
Yes, and I think some of these scenarios that we used in the Tales from the Hotline were relatable. Like, we helped create a couple of them, and the other business partners involved created some. So these were real life things that happened or went on. at these companies, which is really great. It's nice to see that it just doesn't happen at our company. It happens all over the place. So, that was a good thing. So it was a great opportunity to participate in something that seeing it from inception to the end result was really satisfying.
You just reminded me of something. Like, I remember there was a couple of times. So we solicited stories from several companies, and then mixed them all up together and had a group vote on which ones to do. And then as we were working on them, we would have these discussions, and some people would be like, "Well, this is ridiculous because this wouldn't happen." And then one of the other companies would go, "This happened. This is something that happened." And then you'd be like, "Oh, did that happen?" And I think in some cases we unearthed the fact that there were some issues that perhaps some of the companies didn't know was going on, didn't think that it was a problem, whereas other companies were like, "Yeah, this is a problem."
I think it was fun to do that. I know we pushed back on a lot of those because sometimes in the manufacturing industry and the retail industry, there's different ethical concerns that come about. So that's, a lot of us, we tugged and pulled on a lot of those, but we ended up with a good compromise and got some great products out of it. So
one of the things I associate with yours and Joanne's participation was really making sure that these things were global friendly. And I know we've, I don't want to say struggled, but we found it a challenge making sometimes humorous content and finding things that can work. But the storytelling style actually gave us a lot of flexibility. Maybe share a little bit about some of the things that we did to try and make sure they were global friendly.
Yeah, so the English version for the North American folks is always like the funniest one. We get all the phrases and the catchphrases and I think one of them was the Dalai Lama and stuff like that, or Rama, whatever the phrase was.
No drama llama, that's what it was.
No drama llama, right? So, we're looking at these and we're thinking, okay, we get it, but how are we going to translate this into the languages where other people are going to understand it? So that was a bit challenging, but I think, Ronnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the approach we took was, we can use that phrase in the languages where it makes sense to use it, and then translate it in a more professional manner in the languages where it doesn't make such much sense, but it's still not changing the context or the meaning or taking anything away from the video once it's been translated. So, because I opt to leave it in English and then do something else with the other languages if it means turning it into a proper phrase or excluding it entirely or whatever, but at least that's the way we approached it, I think. Yeah,
well, and so a couple of things that we did was, first we wrote it to the group was satisfied, that we felt it was the right balance of entertainment and learning, and then I know you ran it by some subject matter experts in other countries, and they would point out phrases that didn't make sense to them, and then we had the choice of pulling those phrases out, which I think is what most compliance companies tend to do, or compliance organizations tend to do. We made the choice in a couple instances to leave it in and then explain it. And so the example that I'll use is when we said, she thinks herself as a no drama llama. If you don't know what that means, it means she knows something isn't right, but she knows she got to do something. So we kept the charming phrase, but then explained it. So we felt like that gave it the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pat, I wanted to pick up on a point you raised, and actually 2 points: trust and institutional justice. But I really was intrigued by the use of the word trust, because the more or the longer the pandemic lasts, and the more I talk to people about what are the risks, what are the consequences, what are the new issues arising from working from home, I keep hearing the word trust more. And it seems like that is something that is becoming more of an issue, and companies are struggling with how to maintain that employee trust in this current environment. So I was wondering if I might maybe get you to expand a little bit, or why do you think these videos helped with trust? And is that something that you feel like your compliance function can really help communicate as we're all working from home?
Yeah, so working from home has become a big challenge for us, and for most companies. Luckily, we can work from home. There's a lot of people who can't. I think trust aspect in the videos are more about, showcasing the scenario, explaining it all, and really driving home the point about speaking up and trusting that we'll do what we need to do to investigate it. And if it, obviously we also have investigations policies that we need to follow within our own organization. And I think the employees know that and understand that. And I think more and more people are, picking up the phone or going through our online reporting system to raise concerns that they have, whether it's an ethical concern or otherwise. But I think for us, I think anything that we can do from a compliance perspective to help build the trust within the organization is success for us any day.
And I will say that even on a couple of the projects that prior to this that we didn't get to participate in, you guys were kept talking about, well, we're working on a speak up program. We're working on a speak up program, working on trust the process. This was something that was important to you guys for a long period of time. And this particular project, I think, is just to continue to further that relationship and give you more tools so that you can stay in front of employees more frequently with these messages, because we all realize that you can't just have a once a year speak up program. You have to tell people over and over and over again that it's important, and here's what happens, and here's the resources that you have, and you can trust it. And I think, it just has to be constant. It's a never ending journey. And hopefully over time, the culture starts to support that, and you get the good group think instead of the bad group think, right?
Yeah, and I think the key to a lot of it is just being transparent with the employees. I know a few years ago I was involved in a project with Joanne in creating an infographic that's interactive that shows a path of an ethical concern from time of reporting to time of conclusion, and everything along the way you're clicking and you're learning new things about what actually happens and why it's important to either check in or provide your name and your address and your phone number so that it can be properly investigated. And we're very transparent about that. So I think doing stuff along those lines helps build the trust for our employees.
I remember that project, and we didn't get to work on it. I was like, that would have been a fun project to build a fun infographic. So let's. I know you're just now starting to launch these videos. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your plans for how you're planning to deploy them, or I'm not sure where you are in the process, but maybe you could just sort of share your training and comms plan for that.
Joanne is has a very strong view about we create all these great materials and communication tools, and we're going to share them with everybody within our organization. So we make sure that all of our videos, not just our videos, but our training materials, but we're talking videos now, are posted on the intranet. All senior managers, all employees can use them and access them. Senior managers can use them at their departmental meetings or any kind of functional meetings that they're having. And they're a great plug and play, so they can introduce them. A lot of them have topics that are relatable, so we use them that way. And for the Speak Up course that we developed for Magna, we actually took one of the videos that we liked with a current issue that we're facing, and we sparsed it out. So we used it as a case scenario. So we just removed the intro and the ending and used the case study. We presented the case study. We threw in a quiz or a pop quiz and asking employees, what do you think the right course of action should be? And then we played the second part of the video, which actually is a full-blown summary, which is self-contained, and it just worked beautifully, like no extra work on our part. So it was really great to be able to use that scenario, like to break it up and use it as a scenario. And I gather we can probably do that with a lot of them.
Yeah, so just to recap, you're using some embedded within a course that's pushed out through an LMS that you've chopped that up so that you can sort of front it with some information, play half the scene, pause. What would you do here? Play the second half of the scene, and then have your results. Is that a fair assessment of sort of the mechanics of that? Cool. And then when you said packaging some other stuff, you're pairing them up with like talking points and giving them to managers. Is that what you're doing for the local level?
Yeah, so right now we're just posting them on our site. We're actually doing that as we speak. And then we're creating a video summary. I think you've seen that, of all the videos that we have available and with all the key categories that senior managers might be interested in using. And then they can pick the video, view it, and if they like it, they can download it and play it wherever they need to play it. So, yeah.
Cool. And I think that, I just want to point out that I think that works even during remote working. Like teams are still having remote manager-led meetings with their teams. So there's no reason you couldn't play a video and then talk about it over Zoom. So last question, is there any, we always like to encourage people, because people sometimes can get intimidated about trying to do something creative, and there's sometimes internal pushback from the politics that be in their company. Any thoughts or lessons learned or encouragement you can give to the community?
We do, everything for the first 3 or 4 years in our program was so serious, and it was like, how are we going to change it up a little bit? So we're not afraid to be creative, and I don't think companies should be afraid to be creative and use different types of tools to get the message out about compliance. I think it's a great way to, it's relatable. Not everyone's going to get the humor, but the humor is there. And I think it's a great way to not downplay the topic, but kind of, not make it so serious or heavy-handed. So I think, my advice to a lot of companies is just try it out. Like, see what the reaction is with your employees, and I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. We did pilot the Speak Up course with a bunch of people, and we've gotten some positive feedback. So it's we're really excited to have it, roll out at the beginning of next year. So, yeah.
No, that's great. I always tell people, employees always want to see something interesting or different, or thought-provoking. They want something to break up the monotony of the day or of the normal sort of milquetoast communications. It's us as educators that often get in our own way. So I give you guys a lot of credit for being willing to try new things.
So, Pat, first of all, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to share with us your experience about really putting creativity in compliance. That's what Ronnie and I are trying to communicate in this podcast series. Obviously, that's Ronnie's business, but I think it's important because it's the great way to communicate, and was really fascinated on how you were able to use this specific creative messaging to build trust and help push forward on institutional justice and institutional fairness, which I think right now is even more critical. Also, thanks for letting us take a deep dive into sort of the nuts and bolts of the process, because I think Ronnie's right. Not compliance practitioners and other folks in corporations are sometimes intimidated by this, but by kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit, I think you've demonstrated that the creative process is not Ronnie, it's you and Ronnie. It's Ronnie and his clients, and it's a collaborative creative process, and that's what I think makes it work. So once again, thank you. We've been visiting with Pat Figliano, Global Compliance Program Manager at Magna International. Ronnie, you want to say goodbye, Pat?
I would say goodbye, Pat, because I don't think you said her name beautifully, and I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Yes, kudos. You did a great job. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Creativity and Compliance. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review.